Here we go with our breakdown of Matthew chapter 7. Judging others. Do not judge so that you will not be judged. For in the way that you judged, you will be judged. And by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. So the Almighty is telling you basically that He's going to use your own system of measurement by how you judge and forgive people against you, and He's going to use it to teach you a lesson. So if you are merciful, like chapter 5, when we go back to the Sermon on the Mount, those who are merciful will obtain mercy, right? So if you're not judging people, you will not be judged. Okay, very important. Why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and behold, the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly enough to take the speck out of your brother's eye. This is something that a lot of us do. A lot of us do it. We have some knowledge or we have an understanding of something, and then we see somebody who's doing the opposite, and we're quick to tell them, hey, man, you shouldn't be doing that. But we forget that we ourselves are guilty of doing something else. So it's kind of like the story in the book of John, which we'll get to, where the woman was brought out and she was caught in the act of adultery, and they were basically going to stone her to death, but they decided to test Yeshua, and they asked him, hey, what should we do with her? She was caught in adultery. By our law, she's supposed to be stoned to death. And what was his answer? Those of you who are without sin, right, can cast the first stone. Whoever is without sin can cast the first stone. It's the same here. You cannot throw stones at people for the things that they do, knowing that you're guilty of doing things also. Even if your sin isn't the same sin as theirs, it's still sin. So if you're a sinner, stop calling out other people. You can't tell your brother to fix his life when your life is a mess. So straighten out your own life first, get right with the Almighty first, and then you can help others get right. That's the way it has to work. Okay? You hypocrite. Okay, we got to that. Do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine, or they will trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. So that's a metaphor. So in other words, the message is the word that God gives you is precious. It's like a pearl. Okay? You don't just toss it on the ground so people can stomp on. So there will be times when you have the opportunity to speak on his behalf, and you do so. And there will be times where you're going to be speaking to somebody, or you'll see that somebody is just never going to listen to you. So you just need to stop. Stop casting those pearls to them, because they're not going to listen anyway. It's not going to do anything. So it's kind of a matter of our own judgment on when to speak and when not to, in some cases. Prayer in the Golden Rule. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened. Or what man is there among you who, when his son asks for a loaf, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, he will not give him a snake, will he? If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give what is good to those who ask of him? In everything, therefore, treat people the same way you want them to treat you, for it is the law and of the prophets. So basically, if you are persistent and you are dedicated and you are seeking, he will give it to you. Okay? But notice his terminology here says. He says, who among you, when his son asks for a loaf, okay? Or if he asks for a fish. So he didn't say if a stranger. He says if a son. So in other words, if you are behaving like a son or a daughter of the Almighty, and you are persistent and you are focused and you are dedicated to him and you are knocking, then it will be open to you. This doesn't just mean anybody who's like, hey, I want to know the secrets. No, you have to be dedicated. He says son. So in other words, you have to be a follower. Somebody who is very, very dedicated to the cause. The narrow and wide gates. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who find it. That means the path to salvation is very, very small and very limited. The path to destruction is very wide. If you look at Yeshua compared to all these other world religions, it's one path, right? A lot of people will not take that path. But that is the only path that leads to salvation. His path, the path that is thin. The path that is wide that leads to destruction is all these other religions, all these other belief systems, all these other ways of life that are non-messianic. Okay? So if you are on that narrow path, you are on the way to salvation. But it's a lonely path. Lonely. Just you and him. Okay? It's something that to be cherished. It's not a bad lonely. It's a good lonely because he separated you from the world so that you could walk the path before him. A tree and its fruit. Beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from the thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles, are they? So every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit, nor a bad tree produce good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then, you will know them by their fruits. And notice in the beginning of this, he's talking about false prophets. He's talking about teachers. Okay? Now remember, these words are timeless. There was a lot of false teachers in those days, but there's even more false teachers now. Okay? Now look at all these people who claim to be men of God and women of God and leaders of this church and all these kinds of things. Look at the fruits that their actions produce. Joel Osteen, all these TV and evangelical preachers, you know what I mean, with their $6,000-$7,000 suits, showing up in limousines, all that kind of stuff. That's the fruit that they bear. Okay, they're bearing fruit that supports themselves, their riches. And we just went through all the chapters where the Almighty talks about not storing up treasures, earthly treasures for yourself. So you can look at the actions of all these mainstream preachers these days, and you can see that the fruits that they bear are bad. All right. Now, God's true teachers and people will be the ones who are like him, out there on the streets, performing miracles and doing things on a daily basis that no one will ever record or know about. So that's who we're supposed to be, striving to be like. And when you meet people like that, you will see that the things that they do, the fruits of their actions are good. And you can judge them as being a good tree. Now, he just says right here, all those trees that do not bear good fruit, okay, the axe is already waiting to chop them down. Okay, all right? Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire, and that is metaphoric for being tossed into hell. All right? Being chopped down, that means the end of your life. You're dead now. Being tossed in the fire, that's the afterlife. Okay? So then, you will know them by their fruits. Not everyone who says to me, Master, Master, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father, who is in heaven, will enter. Many will say to me on that day, Master, Master, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. A lot of believers don't really understand that, okay? This verse really scares a lot of people. It scared me too. It's like, how do you know that you're not one of those people who thought he was doing good his whole life, and then you finally get to judgment and Yeshua tells you this? He didn't know you, okay? That's what I keep trying to talk to people about, the importance of his name. People are going to come to him and say, Jesus, Jesus, didn't we know you and cast out demons in your name and this and that? Well, you weren't talking to Yehoshua, the Messiah. You weren't calling him by his God-given name. So how would he know you? If somebody came up to you in the streets and started calling you Bob when your name is Lisa, how are you going to know they're talking to you? And if they ran up to you and grabbed you and said, hey, I've been following you since the store and this and that, what are you going to tell them? I don't know you. Depart from me. Okay? It's not only just being a sinner and being lawless and not being a follower. It's also not being respectful and actually calling him by his true name. I know a lot of people don't think that, but it's time that you wake up. Okay? Call him by his name. It's important. The two foundations. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them may be compared to a wise man who built his house on a rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and yet it did not fall, for it had been founded on the rock. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. Then the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. Okay? That is a metaphor letting you know that if you build your life, your foundation, you build the basis of your life on the rock, which is the word of Yeshua, the word of the Father, the word of God, then all of the trials, all of the things that will happen to you in your life, all of the temptation, all of the bad things that will happen, all the rainstorms and the floods and all the things that will come against that house and that foundation, they will not knock it over, because you are founded on the rock, which is Yehoshua, okay? The Son of the Almighty. All right? Now, if you don't heed his word and you don't pay attention to it, you can be compared to a fool who built his house on the sand. Okay? So you're building your life on money. You're building your life on your college degree. You're building your life on possession. You're building your life on whatever the case may be. It could be on anything except for Yeshua. And that's basically building your life, your base, on a foundation of sand. And when the trials come, and when the challenges come, and when the rain and the flood comes, your foundation is going to just wash away, because it wasn't built on his word, on his deeds, on his actions. Understand?